The galaxy had always known the Vascari Empire as the most powerful civilization to ever exist. For centuries, they had conquered planet after planet, expanding their borders far beyond any other species. Their massive fleet of warships moved through the stars like a shadow, striking fear into the hearts of everyone who knew their name. The Vascari believed they were the rulers of the universe. Nothing, no species, no weapon could stand against them. The Vascari were tall, their skin a dark shade of silver, with glowing eyes that could pierce the darkness of space itself. Their technology was advanced, light years ahead of anything other species could achieve. Their warships were made of living metal that could heal itself, and their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single shot. When the Vascari came, worlds fell to their knees. Their empire stretched from one end of the galaxy to the other, and they had never faced serious resistance. Every world they encountered fell under their rule, no matter how advanced or powerful the inhabitants. The Vascari considered themselves to be the supreme beings of the galaxy, destined to dominate and control everything they came across. They believed that no species could challenge their superiority, and this belief had remained unshaken for centuries. For the Vascari, war was a simple thing. They would arrive at a new planet, obliterate any resistance, and claim the world as their own. The galaxy was nothing more than a collection of planets for them to conquer, their inhabitants mere pawns in a game they always won. As far as the Vascari were concerned, the galaxy was theirs to command, and nothing would ever change that. But one fateful day, the Vascari received a mission unlike any they had encountered before. Their intelligence networks had picked up a strange signal coming from a small blue planet in the far reaches of the galaxy. This planet, called Earth, was not like any of the others they had conquered. It was not a planet of warlike species or ancient civilizations. In fact, the Vascari had not even considered Earth worth investigating for centuries. But the signal was curious, and curiosity had always been something the Vascari could not ignore. The signal was not a threat. It was a message, broadcast in a language the Vascari had never encountered before. They were intrigued. The message was vague but clear. We are here. No species had ever dared send such a message to the Vascari before. No one had ever so boldly invited them to make contact. The Vascari commanders met in their war chambers, the glow of holographic maps casting eerie shadows on their faces. The decision was quick. They would send a fleet to Earth to investigate this strange message and assert their dominance. The aliens did not think for a moment that the humans would pose any real threat. They considered Earth a primitive backwater, barely worth their time. The Vascari believed it would be an easy conquest. A fleet of warships, the size of which had never been seen before, was dispatched. Their ships gleamed like polished metal, each one a symbol of the might of the Vascari Empire. It was a show of power, a statement to the galaxy that the Vascari were untouchable. They would land on Earth, subjugate the humans, and move on to their next conquest. That was how it always went. But something was different this time. As the Vascari fleet neared Earth, their scanners picked up strange readings from the planet's surface. Nothing that could explain the signal, but something unusual. There were no signs of advanced technology, no fleets of ships ready to defend the planet. And yet the signal persisted. The Vascari fleet arrived at Earth's orbit with a sense of calm confidence, convinced they would crush whatever lay below them. But even as they prepared for their descent, the nagging feeling of something being off began to settle in their minds. It was a feeling they were not used to. The Vascari commanders were eager to establish control. They dispatched their ground forces, sending hundreds of their finest soldiers to secure the planet. The aliens descended in ships that were sleek and fast, cutting through the clouds as they prepared to make their mark. They landed in the cities, their warriors stepping out in full battle armor, their weapons ready for action. But when they looked around, they found something that they did not expect. Humans. The Vascari had read reports, of course, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality. The humans did not look like much. They were small, frail creatures, barely above the level of primitive apes. The Vascari commanders snickered among themselves, confident that the humans would cower before them. But something about this place, this planet, was strange. The humans didn't seem to fear the Vascari. Instead, they looked at the invading aliens with curiosity, as if the Vascari were the strange ones. The humans did not run or hide. They stood firm, watching the Vascari soldiers with unwavering gazes. The Vascari soldiers began to move in, but their confidence quickly turned to confusion. As they approached the humans, they realized something else was happening. The humans weren't alone. They had strange, powerful creatures by their side. At first, the Vascari thought these were wild animals, but as they watched, the humans seemed to command the creatures, making them move at their will. The Vascari soldiers were not accustomed to seeing such animals behave in this way. They were confused, intrigued, and a little unsettled. These creatures were unlike anything the Vascari had ever encountered before. Some were large, their teeth sharp as daggers. Others were smaller, but still dangerous in their own way. The humans, however, seemed to have control over them, using gestures and sounds to communicate and direct these powerful beings. The Vascari commanders had seen many species, many forms of life, but never before had they encountered this kind of bond between a species and its animals. The humans didn't just tame these creatures, they controlled them, made them follow commands and fight by their side. And what was even more unsettling was that the Vascari realized that these creatures were not just ordinary animals. Some were predators, massive, terrifying creatures that could tear apart anything in their path. The Vascari stood frozen. This was not what they had expected. They had believed that Earth would be an easy conquest, that the humans would fall like all the others. But instead, they found themselves facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever imagined. And now, the real question was, what were these humans capable of, and how had they tamed such powerful creatures? As the humans stood tall, their eyes locked onto the alien invaders, the Vascari realized that their confidence was beginning to waver. The true power of Earth was not in its cities or weapons. It was in its creatures, its ability to tame and control the wildest beasts. And for the first time in a long while, the Vascari felt fear. This was just the beginning. The humans were not the weak species the Vascari had thought them to be. And now, the invaders would learn just how powerful humanity really was. The Vascari had underestimated Earth, and now they were starting to realize the scale of their mistake. As their soldiers stood in formation, ready to sweep across the planet, they observed the humans and their pets with growing curiosity and unease. The humans were not running in terror. They were not scrambling for weapons or defenses. Instead, they were smiling. The Vascari could not understand it. They had never met a species that did not cower before them. And yet, these humans seemed strangely calm. The alien soldiers hesitated. The creatures, wild, fierce animals, were not attacking immediately. But the tension in the air was thick. The Vascari commanders looked down at the humans, who stood in small groups, casually surrounded by their tamed beasts. There was no fear in their eyes, only a quiet confidence that unnerved the invaders. A Vascari general, his armored form towering over the humans, stepped forward. He expected the humans to fall before him, to beg for their lives, or at least to retreat into their cities. But what happened next shocked him to his core. One of the humans, a woman no older than 30, stepped forward, her hand resting lightly on the back of a massive creature. It was a four-legged predator, its muscles rippling beneath its thick fur, and its eyes glowed with a dangerous, intelligent light. The creature's fangs were long enough to tear through armor, but it stood still, waiting for the woman's command. She looked up at the Vascari general, her expression calm but unyielding. "You think you've won," the woman said softly, her voice carrying across the tense silence. "But we've been training these beasts for millennia. You can't conquer us like you've conquered other worlds." The general narrowed his glowing eyes. His soldiers were watching in confusion, unsure of how to react. The woman continued, speaking with quiet authority. You think we're weak, but we've tamed the galaxy's most dangerous predators. We don't need your weapons or your ships. All we need is what we've already got. And with that, the woman gave a subtle gesture, and the creature by her side leaped forward, snarling. The Vascari soldiers took a step back in surprise. They had expected a battle, but not like this. As if on cue, other humans followed suit. One man, holding a staff in his hand, called out to a massive bird-like creature, its wings spanning nearly 20 feet. The bird spread its wings, creating a gust of wind strong enough to knock a few of the smaller Vascari soldiers off balance. The humans were not alone. They were part of something far greater. The Vascari watched as more and more humans began to command their beasts. A smaller creature, no taller than a human, but covered in armor-like scales, lunged forward with incredible speed. It bounded over obstacles, moving so fast that the Vascari had no time to react. The soldiers fired their weapons, but the creature darted and dodged with astonishing agility. It was unlike anything the Vascari had seen before. These creatures didn't just follow commands. They were an extension of the humans, fighting with purpose and precision. The Vascari general's confidence faltered. These humans weren't just defending their planet. They were fighting as though they had prepared for this moment their entire lives. The bond between the humans and their creatures was not a simple one. It was something far deeper. The Vascari had assumed that they could crush Earth beneath their heels, like they had done to so many other civilizations. But now they were starting to realize the truth. These creatures were not mere pets. They were warriors in their own right, and the humans had trained them, nurtured them, and formed an unbreakable bond over thousands of years. This was not the planet they thought it was. The general gave a sharp command, ordering his soldiers to fire on the humans, to strike them down with everything they had. But even as the weapons fired, something strange happened. The creatures didn't run, and the humans didn't flinch. They moved in harmony, as if they were one entity, responding to each other's movements and commands in a synchronized dance of survival. One Vascari soldier aimed his weapon at the woman and her beast, only for the creature to leap into the air, swiping the soldier aside with a single swipe of its paw. The Vascari were stunned by the sheer power and speed of the attack. These weren't just trained pets, they were apex predators, capable of going toe-to-toe with some of the deadliest species in the galaxy. The Vascari commanders on the ships above watched in disbelief. They had thought Earth would be a simple conquest, a world to add to their growing empire. But instead, they had found something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. Earth was not a weak, unprotected planet. It was a place where humans had tamed the most vicious creatures known to the galaxy, using them as partners in battle. The very thing the Vascari had always relied on, superior firepower, was useless against these beasts. As the battle raged on, the Vascari began to realize the truth. They had been outmatched, not by advanced weapons or superior technology, but by the humans' bond with their creatures. This connection was something the Vascari could not understand, and it was proving to be their greatest enemy. The Vascari soldiers slowly started to fall back. The idea of retreating was foreign to them, but the strength of the humans and their beasts was undeniable. The general stood frozen for a moment, contemplating the situation. He had seen entire civilizations crumble before his might, but never had he encountered an enemy like this. The Vascari, proud and unyielding, were facing a foe that was not afraid of them. And with that realization, the true battle began. It wasn't just about technology or power anymore. It was about something deeper, a bond between species, a strength forged over thousands of years. The Vascari had no idea what they were truly up against, but they were about to find out. As the Vascari forces began to retreat, confusion spread throughout their ranks. They had never encountered an enemy like this before, one that used animals not just for companionship, but for battle. These weren't simple pets. They were fierce, powerful creatures that had been honed into deadly weapons over millennia of human cultivation. On the ground, the humans were far from retreating. They were thriving. The bond between them and their apex predators was undeniable. Every movement, every command seemed instinctive, as though they had become one with their beasts over time. The battlefield was alive with chaos, but there was a strange beauty to it. Humans and animals working in perfect harmony, each defending the other. Every time one of the Vascari soldiers tried to advance, a creature would leap into action, stopping them in their tracks. The Vascari commanders watching from their command ships above Earth were beginning to realize just how unprepared they were for this fight. Their vast fleets, their superior firepower, their advanced technology, they all seemed futile against the raw, primal power of Earth's inhabitants. The human race had tapped into something ancient, something that even the Vascari could not understand. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting with the full force of nature at their side. On the battlefield, a human man, tall and rugged, stood beside a massive four-legged predator. The creature was the size of a small building, its eyes burning with intelligence and fury. The man whispered something into the beast's ear, and without hesitation, the animal charged forward, plowing through the Vascari lines with terrifying speed. One of the alien soldiers tried to raise his weapon, but before he could react, the creature was upon him, its powerful claws raking through the soldier's armor as if it were paper. The Vascari had underestimated the humans and their creatures, thinking they were weak and vulnerable. But the truth was much darker. The humans had lived alongside these creatures for thousands of years. They had learned their ways, adapted to their needs, and together they had become an unstoppable force. The humans' mastery over these beasts wasn't just about strength. It was about the bond they shared, the trust that allowed them to fight together as one. As the Vascari retreated further, the humans began to press forward. The ground shook with the force of their combined efforts. The alien invaders, who had once believed they could conquer Earth with ease, were now the ones on the defensive. Their ships above Earth began to scramble as the situation deteriorated. For the first time, the Vascari were faced with a situation they could not control. The world they had believed was theirs for the taking was slipping away, and they had no idea how to stop it. In the midst of the chaos, the leader of the human resistance, a woman named Captain Alara, stood tall, commanding her forces with unwavering authority. Her eyes scanned the battlefield, watching as the Vascari soldiers scrambled to regroup. She knew the time had come for them to make their final push. "Don't let them recover," she shouted, her voice cutting through the clamor of battle. "Press the advantage. Show them what we're capable of." With a wave of her hand, she signaled to the nearest unit. Immediately, the humans and their beasts charged forward. The Vascari were no longer fighting just against humans. They were fighting against an ancient, primal force that they could not hope to understand. As the humans advanced, their predators followed, swift and merciless. Every time a Vascari soldier fired, the creatures were there, blocking the shots, counterattacking, and forcing the aliens to retreat. The Vascari generals began to panic. Their perfect plan was unraveling before their eyes. They had thought Earth would be an easy conquest, but now they were being beaten back by the very species they had once dismissed as primitive. The vast forces that had once made the Vascari feel invincible now seemed insignificant in the face of this newfound resistance. The humans had no intention of simply driving the invaders off their planet. They intended to show the galaxy that Earth was not a weak, defenseless world to be conquered at will. The humans were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something far greater, the future of their species. With every passing minute, the tide of battle turned more in the humans' favor. The Vascari's once dominant warships in the sky began to fall back, retreating from the battlefield as the combined forces of humans and their apex predators pushed them further from Earth's surface. The message was clear. No matter how advanced the invaders were, no matter how mighty their technology, They would never break the bond that had been formed between humanity and the beasts they had tamed. The Vascari had lost the advantage, and they were now facing the full force of a species they had underestimated for far too long. As the alien ships began to retreat into the sky, the human forces stood their ground. Their creatures were still by their side, watching the retreating invaders with sharp eyes, ready to strike again if necessary. The humans had succeeded in proving a point, and the message would echo across the galaxy. Never underestimate humanity, especially when they have the strength of nature itself on their side. For the Vascari, this was a loss unlike any they had ever faced, and for the humans, it was only the beginning. They had shown the universe that Earth was not a planet to be conquered. It was a place where, even in the face of impossible odds, humanity would rise, united with the ancient power of nature and ready to defend their home with everything they had. As the Vascari fleet retreated back into the stars, their forces scattered in confusion. The galaxy's eyes turned to Earth. The Galactic Council, a powerful alliance of the universe's oldest and most influential species, had been observing the invasion from a distance. For eons, they had considered themselves the guardians of the galaxy, the ones who determined what was and wasn't allowed to flourish in the cosmos. And when they first heard of the Vascari invasion of Earth, they had been certain it would be an easy victory. Humanity was just another primitive species, barely capable of space travel, let alone posing a serious threat to the mighty Vascari. But as the reports from the battlefield came in, the Council's confidence began to crumble. The Vascari had always been formidable, their strength and advanced technology unrivaled across most of the galaxy. They had conquered world after world with ruthless efficiency. So when the invasion of Earth began, it seemed like just another routine operation, another world to add to their ever-expanding empire. But that was before the Vascari discovered what humanity had been hiding for centuries. The reports were unlike anything the Council had ever seen. A species with the ability to tame and fight alongside apex predators, creatures of immense strength and fury, trained and bred by humans to become unstoppable forces of nature. The humans didn't just control their environment. They were one with it. They had shaped these creatures into weapons of war, creatures that fought with an instinctual bond to their human companions. As the Council members sat in their grand chamber, a holographic display of the Earth's battlefields flickered before them, showing the retreating Vascari forces, their ships scattered like leaves in the wind. The air in the room was thick with tension. There was no denying the truth now. Earth was not the weak, primitive planet they had assumed it to be. The humans were a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy was about to find out just how powerful they truly were. How could we have been so blind? One of the Council members, an ancient being from the Kryllic system, muttered under his breath. His thin, skeletal hands gripped the armrests of his chair, his yellow eyes locked on the unfolding battle. The humans, they'd been cultivating these creatures for millennia. They've forged a bond with nature that is beyond anything we could have imagined. Another Council member, a towering creature from the Rigori cluster, shook his head, clearly disturbed by the implications of the reports. We've underestimated them. We saw their technology as inferior, their ways as backward, but they've outmaneuvered us with sheer cunning and instinct. The leader of the Council, an ancient being whose voice resonated with the wisdom of 1,000 generations, raised a hand, signaling for silence. The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to the leader, who had been listening intently to the reports from Earth. His eyes glowed with the weight of centuries, and his face remained expressionless as he processed the information. The humans have proven themselves formidable, the leader said, his voice echoing through the chamber. But they have also revealed something far more dangerous than their creatures or their technology. They have shown that they possess an unyielding spirit, an ability to fight for their survival that goes beyond reason. He paused, his gaze shifting to the holographic display of the retreating Vascari. We cannot ignore what has happened here. If the humans are allowed to continue, they will not only defend their world, they will disrupt the entire balance of power in this galaxy. The Vascari were only the beginning. If they fall, other species will follow. We cannot allow this. The tension in the room was palpable. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to maintain order in the galaxy, but the humans were challenging that order in a way that no one had expected. If the humans could defeat the Vascari, what would stop them from challenging the rest of the galaxy's powers? We must act now, the leader continued. The humans cannot be allowed to grow stronger. We will send emissaries, and we will make our presence known. We will offer them a choice: join the Galactic Council or face the consequences of their defiance. One of the younger council members, a diplomat from the oceanic world of Xikra, hesitated before speaking up. But what if they refuse? What if they see us as another threat to their survival? The leader's gaze hardened. Then we will make them see the consequences of their choice. As the council deliberated on their next move, back on Earth, the humans were already preparing for whatever might come next. They had proven their strength to the galaxy, but they knew that this battle was far from over. The Vascari were just the first invaders they had faced, and they would not be the last. The humans were not naive. They understood that the galaxy would not simply let them be. Captain Alara, still at the helm of humanity's defense, stared out across the battlefield, her mind racing with the possibilities. She knew that the Council would come, just as they had always come to assert their dominance over lesser species. But this time, humanity wasn't going to bow down. The human race had been underestimated for far too long. "We've shown them what we can do," she muttered to herself, her voice steady, but filled with determination. "Now we'll show them what we won't do." With that, she turned to her commanders, ready to face whatever challenge lay ahead. The battle for Earth had only just begun. The moment the Galactic Council made its decision, it set events in motion that would forever change the course of human history. The emissaries were dispatched, elite diplomats and soldiers, representatives of the most ancient and powerful species in the galaxy. Their mission was clear: bring humanity into the fold of the Galactic Council or force them into submission. The emissaries arrived in a massive silver ship, its sleek surface reflecting the light of the stars. They landed in a desolate part of Earth, an uninhabited region far from major cities. The ship touched down with a soft hum, its massive engines powering down with eerie precision. The emissaries stepped out of the craft, their armored forms gleaming under the strange sky. But the humans were ready. Captain Alara, now fully aware that their victory over the Vascari had only made them a target for something far more dangerous, had already prepared a countermeasure. She was not naive enough to believe that the Council would simply let them be. They would come. They would test humanity's resolve, and they would fail. Standing before the emissaries was a team of humanity's best, each one handpicked for their skills, knowledge, and most importantly, their will to protect Earth at all costs. Alara, as the leader of this new front, stood at the forefront, her gaze unwavering as the emissaries approached. The leader of the emissaries, a towering being with a face as cold and distant as the stars themselves, stepped forward. His skin shimmered like polished stone, and his eyes glowed with an eerie, almost unnatural light. "You stand before the Galactic Council," the emissary spoke, his voice deep and resonant. "We are here to offer you a place among the stars, to join our alliance and share in the power that has shaped the galaxy. Reject this offer, and you will be faced with the consequences of your defiance." Captain Alara stepped forward, her face calm, yet filled with the weight of her people's future. She had anticipated this moment. She had prepared for it, mentally and physically. But she wasn't going to let the galaxy's most powerful species believe they could simply force humanity into submission. "You misunderstand," Alara replied, her voice steady. "We don't need your alliance. We never asked for your help, and we certainly don't need your permission to survive." The emissary's eyes narrowed. "Do you truly believe you stand a chance against us? We are the rulers of the galaxy. Your species is nothing more than an infant in the grand scheme of things." Alara didn't flinch. She had heard it all before. The galaxy's most powerful species had always believed they could crush humanity. They believed humanity's strength was a fluke, that they could simply overwhelm the humans with numbers, technology, and brute force. They believed the humans were nothing more than an insignificant blip in the grand design of the galaxy. But Alara knew better. "We've already proven that your strength means nothing to us," she said, her voice ringing out with conviction. "You are right about one thing. We are nothing compared to your power. But that's because we've always been something more. We've survived against everything the galaxy has thrown at us. We fought back when the Vascari thought they could take us. We've tamed the wildest creatures the galaxy has ever known. And we will fight you, no matter who you are or where you come from." The emissaries stood still for a moment, as if processing Alara's words. The silence between them was thick with tension, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. "We have made our offer," the emissary leader said, his voice icy. "Refuse us, and the consequences will be far worse than you can imagine. You are too small, too weak to stand against the might of the galaxy. Then come and show us," Alara said boldly, "because we are not afraid of what you bring." At her signal, the ground around the emissaries seemed to shift as large, powerful creatures emerged from the shadows. These weren't just ordinary animals. They were the apex predators that humanity had tamed over millennia. Giant, muscular beasts with glowing eyes and fearsome jaws. Some of them were the size of small buildings, their scales gleaming in the light of the emissary's ship. Others had wings as large as city blocks, casting massive shadows as they circled above. The emissaries faltered, their eyes wide with shock. The leader of the emissaries took a step back, his mind racing. This wasn't part of the plan. These creatures, these living weapons, were unlike anything the emissaries had encountered. The humans had not only survived by technological advancement, they had learned to control the most powerful and dangerous beasts in the galaxy. They had taken the wildest forces of nature and made them their own. "You," the emissary leader stammered, his voice shaking for the first time. "You've tamed these creatures." Alara nodded. "We didn't just tame them. We made them allies. We fought alongside them and made them stronger. We've been doing this for millennia. Now we offer you the same choice we gave the Vascari. Join us or face the consequences." The emissary leader turned to his companions, his face a mix of anger and fear. The powerful force that had come to Earth to subjugate humanity now found itself on the edge of panic. This wasn't a species they could easily crush or control. The humans had leveled the playing field, and now the emissaries were the ones who were out of their depth. "This is not over," the emissary leader growled, his voice filled with fury. "You will regret defying the Galactic Council. Mark my words." And with that, the emissaries retreated into their ship, leaving behind a tense silence. Humanity had made its statement. The Council had come to offer power, but humanity had shown that it was more than capable of taking care of itself. The message was clear. Earth was no longer a weak, defenseless planet. The humans had tamed the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, and now they were ready to tame the galaxy itself. The silence after the emissaries left Earth was unsettling. Captain Alara stood on the balcony of the command center, gazing at the stars. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would come next. The emissaries had retreated, but the decision they had made was far from final. She knew the Galactic Council wouldn't just accept this rejection. Their pride was too strong, and humanity had made a bold statement by showing the emissaries their strength. It wasn't long before the first signs of retaliation appeared. A fleet of warships, unlike anything the humans had ever seen, appeared on Earth's radar. These ships were massive, towering behemoths that blotted out the stars as they descended toward the planet. The ships were sleek, with gleaming surfaces and dark, ominous energy readings. It was clear that the Galactic Council had sent its most powerful armada. Captain Alara gathered her team in the war room, her eyes scanning the holomap of the incoming fleet. The room was tense, filled with the sound of rapid typing as the staff worked to assess the threat. Every face was drawn, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. The council had not taken their rejection lightly. "We have no idea what we're dealing with," Captain Alara said, her voice grim. "These ships are unlike anything we've seen before. Whatever is coming, it's not just a typical military response. This is the full force of the council." One of her officers, Commander Lyra, stepped forward. "They've sent the Apex Fleet, the strongest military arm the council has. Their ships are equipped with weapons that can destroy entire planets. These aren't ships meant to intimidate. They are here to wipe us out." Alara nodded, her expression hardening. "So be it. If they think they can break us, they'll learn how wrong they are." As the fleet grew closer, the humans scrambled to prepare. They activated their strongest defenses, including weapons that had been in development for years. But they had one more secret: the creatures they had tamed, the apex predators. These animals were not just pets. They were living, breathing weapons. Alara had already ordered the strategic positioning of these creatures, ready to unleash them if needed. The ground shook as one of the massive creatures, a winged beast the size of a skyscraper, took its place along the Earth's defenses. Its massive wings fluttered, sending gusts of wind that could knock down anything in its path. The humans had made sure that no part of Earth was defenseless. With their tamed creatures and advanced technology, they were ready for the battle of a lifetime. But it wasn't just the weapons that were ready. The humans had also been preparing their minds, their hearts, and their resolve. They had been underestimated for so long. Now, they would show the galaxy the true strength of humanity. The enemy fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, and the atmosphere grew electric. The humans, despite their fear, were ready. They wouldn't just fight to defend their planet. They would fight to prove their place in the galaxy. Over the comms, the voice of the enemy fleet's commander echoed across the room, booming with authority. "Humans, you have made your choice, and now you will face the consequences." Captain Alara's voice was calm, but firm as she responded. "We made our choice the moment we tamed the beasts of this planet. We chose to stand, and we chose to fight. If the Galactic Council wants a war, they'll have to deal with us." The tension in the air was thick as the battle began. Ships engaged in fiery combat, weapons blasting from every angle. But despite the overwhelming odds, humanity held their ground. They were more than just survivors. They were fighters. And they had a secret weapon no one else could match: their connection with the apex predators, their allies in this war. As the enemy fleet pushed closer, a roar filled the sky. The massive beasts that humans had tamed began to charge forward, breaking through the Earth's atmosphere and entering the fray. Their terrifying roars shook the ground, sending fear into the hearts of the enemy soldiers who had never encountered such creatures before. One of the largest creatures, a massive serpent-like being with scales that shimmered like diamonds, coiled around one of the enemy warships. Its powerful tail lashed out, cracking the ship in half. The ships of the Galactic Council were impressive, but they were no match for these wild forces of nature, creatures that had been molded by humanity into powerful, unstoppable warriors. The battle was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The humans, fighting alongside their creatures, seemed unstoppable. The enemy fleet's commander, watching in disbelief as his forces were overwhelmed, began to realize the truth. The humans weren't the weak, defenseless species they had thought them to be. They were fierce, powerful, and resourceful, capable of fighting back against the strongest forces in the galaxy. As the battle raged on, the Galactic Council's fleet began to retreat. Their ships, battered and broken, pulled back from Earth's atmosphere. The emissaries had underestimated humanity's strength, and now the Council's forces were forced to acknowledge the truth. Humanity was not to be trifled with. Captain Alara stood in the war room, watching as the enemy fleet withdrew. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The humans had proven their strength, but there were still many challenges ahead. "We've won today," Alara said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "But this is just the beginning. The galaxy will learn that humanity is not just a species to be ignored. We are here to stay. The aftermath of the battle was deafening. The silent void of space now carried the weight of victory and fear. Humanity had just sent a message across the stars, one that no one would soon forget. The Galactic Council, for all its power and pride, had been forced to retreat. But as the smoke cleared from Earth's orbit and the echoes of battle faded into the abyss, the question lingered in the air: would this be enough? Captain Alara stood at the helm of the flagship, her gaze fixed on the stars. Her crew had done the impossible, repelling a fleet far superior in numbers and firepower. But deep down, she knew this wasn't the end. The Council had retreated, but their humiliation would not go unnoticed. Alert status. Incoming transmission. A voice rang out from the comms officer, snapping Alara from her thoughts. "Patch it through," she ordered. The image on the screen flickered, revealing the stern face of the Galactic Council's supreme leader. His eyes were narrow, his expression cold, and though the words had not yet been spoken, his demeanor spoke volumes. "We meet again, Captain Alara," he began, his voice sharp. "I would have hoped for a different outcome, but your species has once again proven its stubbornness." Alara's eyes narrowed. "We don't back down. Not when it comes to our survival, and not when it comes to our place in the galaxy." The Supreme Leader's lips curled into a tight smile, though it lacked warmth. "Indeed, but do not mistake this victory as a sign of your strength. We will not tolerate further defiance." "Then you'll have to make us," Alara replied, her voice steady. "We've already shown you that we're capable of fighting back, and we're not afraid of what comes next." The Supreme Leader's face darkened, but he held his composure. "Very well. You have bought yourselves some time. But understand this, Captain. Every action has consequences. The galaxy will remember this day. The galaxy will not forgive this humiliation." "Then let it remember," Alara said firmly. "We'll be here, and we'll fight." With that, the transmission ended. The silence in the room was thick, filled with the weight of the threat that still hung in the air. Alara knew the galaxy would not be the same after this. The Galactic Council had lost face, but they would not forget what had happened, and they would not allow this to go unanswered. Alara turned to her officers. "Prepare for what comes next. We've won this battle, but the war is far from over." A few weeks passed, and Earth saw the return of its weary soldiers, celebrated as heroes for their role in defeating the most powerful fleet ever sent to the planet. The humans who had once been seen as weak and insignificant had proven their worth, their resolve, and their ability to fight for their survival. But the celebrations were short-lived. As Alara watched the news broadcasts, it became clear that the galaxy had taken notice. The Council's influence stretched far, and though they had suffered a humiliating defeat, their reach was vast. Allies of the Council, including rival factions and warlords, began to gather on the outer rim of the galaxy. The stage was set for a new kind of war, one that would push humanity to its limits. Alara was back in the war room, looking over the latest intelligence reports. She had no illusions about what was coming next. This wasn't just a battle for Earth's survival anymore. This was about humanity's place in the galaxy, a place they had fought for and earned, but now had to defend. The transmission came through just as Alara was finishing the report. The holographic figure of the Galactic Council's emissary appeared once again. But this time, there was no smug arrogance. Instead, the emissary's face was filled with something Alara hadn't expected: respect. "Captain Alara," the emissary said, "we may have underestimated you. The strength your people have shown is undeniable." Alara stood straighter. "And yet, you tried to destroy us." "We did," the emissary admitted, "but we've come to realize that your species is more than just a problem. You're a force to be reckoned with. The Council may not forgive the insult you've caused, but there are others who would see the galaxy shaped differently. We wish to extend an offer, an alliance." Alara's heart skipped a beat. An alliance? After all that had happened, It seemed almost too surreal. An alliance? Alara repeated. What kind of alliance? One that would unite your species with others who are tired of the Council's rule, the emissary explained. There are many factions across the galaxy that would like to see the Council's power diminished. You've proven you have the will to fight. We offer you the chance to join us and lead the way. For the first time, Alara felt a flicker of hope. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about changing the galaxy itself. The galaxy had come to fear humanity. Now, humanity had the chance to reshape it. We'll think about it, Alara said, her voice filled with determination. The emissary nodded, and the transmission ended. Alara turned to her officers, her mind racing. The galaxy had just changed in ways they couldn't yet fully understand. The fight for Earth was far from over, but now, humanity had allies, and the possibility of a future where they weren't just survivors. They could be leaders. Prepare for the next phase, Alara said, her voice steady but full of resolve. The battle for our place in the galaxy is just beginning.